Hey there, welcome to the Improv Network podcast. This is a series of conversations aimed at building stronger connections throughout the improv community. I'm James Quesada, the education director for the Improv Network. Please check out the improvnetwork.org. You can find all sorts of resources, including interviews and blogs, and a dedicated improv FAQ page there with these conversations cataloged, as well as some mini lectures on improv topics from me, if you dig deep enough, or you can go to the Improv FAQ YouTube channel where this is live streaming and look at the playlist of videos there. If you're watching this live stream, you're either watching it on the Improv FAQ YouTube channel or the Improv Network Facebook page or Facebook group. Those are the places that we live stream it. And if you can't join for the live stream, you can always find us anywhere podcasts are found as an audio-only podcast and take us with you in your pocket. This is where Bob would normally rip on me for saying, take us with you in your pocket. But Bob's not here, okay? He's working. And actually, I had a sudden work thing come up, which is why we're streaming at noon instead of 1. So I apologize to anybody's lives that are shaken about that. We do try to keep consistent with our schedule, but sometimes life happens and we got to make a small change. And that is the case today. So thanks for joining us at noon instead of 1. But just an FYI that we will continue to stream normally at 1 p.m. on Sundays. Speaking of timing and flexibility, our guest was very kind to also move their schedule around to be here at noon today. Very excited to have a good friend of mine here in New York who is, on top of being a very funny improviser and stand-up, he is also the director of classes at the People's Improv Theater. And he is here with us today. Please welcome Sonny Atwal.
And the crowd goes wild.
And the rock band comes down from the ceiling.
Who wants to hear a new hit single?
What's up, man? Thanks so much for joining.
Oh, man, I'm so excited to be here. I am a big fan of improv FAQs. I send them to my students from time to time so they can understand stuff.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. You know, I wish I could keep doing more of those. It's very time consuming. And I do, you know, the thing is, I feel like I got through a good chunk of, like, initially that series was supposed to be like 20 questions, like the 20 FAQs that I could come up with. And then I was like, I really like to do more of these because I just was really enjoying working on them. But realistically, like the ones that I got through, I was like, I think those are all the ones that I really wanted to offer up my input on. So, you know, there's part of it that feels kind of like complete, and there's part of it me that wants to eventually get back to it and keep doing those. But I appreciate you supporting them still. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I am a huge fan. So today we're talking about negative space, right?
That's right. Yeah. So you suggested as a topic negative space, which I thought was really interesting. And can you just set us up with what you had in mind for that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, in improvisation, negative space is a term that I throw around all the time in the sense of like working around everything that's already been developed. Like, if this is developed, what does that mean about everything else around it? And that's a different style of yes-anding, in my opinion. And it's also something that I remember talking to James about this one time at Pioneers. And then I was really, really happy when we watched Dave Pascazzi and Michael Shannon at the Pit East. And during the FAQ part, or during the Q&A, Dave and Michael Shannon made a point to mention the negative space. And I thought that was really cool. it's something that I cling to when I'm improvising, and I think that it makes everything a lot less intimidating once you kind of understand it.
Yeah, and so I'm going to throw out what my initial thought on negative space was, just because I think when we're applying it in the way that you're describing, which I think is much more. There's many more ways to apply your definition of negative space in improv than this. But the first way that I learned the term negative space was about object work and miming. That, like, if you hold your hand like this, it's what you're doing is implying in the empty space, you know, your hand is taking up, I guess, positive space, or like actual space, but it's the empty space that you're actually playing around with or shaping, you know, people's imagination with. And so just in case anybody is like, why are we, what was with the term negative space? That makes sense to me, that like, okay, well, you have what's actually there, or in your case, what's actually been established or explicitly established. And then you have all the stuff that you're implying that isn't there, but is really still the thing that you're creating, building people's imagination around.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's cool, because that's probably the better way is of describing negative space. But I when I was in speech and debate, the way they taught us to, like, they were like, always feel the weight of everything you're actually lifting. And like, also, like, I love the what is it called? Like, there's a specific term for this, where you is to, like, really show the shape of something. You just literally let your fingers, yeah, right. Each,
yeah, you gotta let it like mold to it. Yeah. But that's great. I don't think it's it's not better or worse. I think that it's just an easier way for me to visualize it. But I love broadening it to apply to everything. You know, like once, you know, I'm gonna have a hard time coming up with examples here, because it's noon on Sunday and I've only just got my coffee. But do you have examples that you go to as a teacher when you start talking about negative space? Do you kind of give up scenarios or anything that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm always like, my biggest thing I'm trying to impress on my students is, like, internally asking yourself questions, like, so if this person says one thing, what does that say about me? And I remember doing a scene where someone was like, I'm a really cheap person. Like, just someone saying, I'm a really cheap person. And then I was playing off of that. Like, if that person's cheap, what does that say about my character? Maybe my character is really charitable, right? And now we have a whole dynamic between the two of a charitable person and a cheap person. They can still be friends, but it's just about establishing pretty much who you are and what you're doing based off of what the other person has already said.
Yeah, I think that's a great great focus in a scene, to figure out how to offer and really how to yes and, because, you know, with the term yes and, it can be easy for students early on to get hung up on the literal yes and of it, and also, like, okay, well, if we yes and it into infinity, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have a good three-dimensional scene. So thinking about, like, oh, well, what can I offer, or what can I, like, what can I accept in the yes is like, oh, okay, this person's a cheap person, and is like, and, you know, so they don't like to spend money. If me and my character are going to be doing something that costs money, then they're not going to be too happy about it, or they're going to find ways around spending money. You know, you're like, okay, cool, I can take that and use it for something. And so, okay, what would be an uncomfortable situation to be in is like, we're, we're going to see an expensive concert. We're at a concert. We haven't established that. If your opening line is just really cheap, then like I can be like, okay, given all that, I hear that, and then I'm like, let me put us at like, well, look, man, drinks are $15 at a stadium. That's just how it is. Like, you got to get all around,
yeah, or even like, hey man, drinks are $15 a stadium, and that's why I'm buying all your drinks tonight, because you're cheap.
Yeah.
Like, just having that, like, working completely around just that one characteristic trait.
Yeah. I want you to experience the world, man. So tonight's on me.
Yeah. Tonight's on me tonight, bud.
Yeah. I want to see the happiness of money. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, at what point did you pick up this concept for yourself, and how did it change or shape the way that you were playing? Like, remind me where you got it from.
I mean, I wasn't really taught this as much as I just happened to be able to watch. So I jam-packed so much improv into my life in a year before the pandemic that I was just I was watching too much stuff and also doing too much stuff with improv. So like I was doing so I had started the program in January and I finished it within a year. So level 1 through 5 and then master class. And while that's all happening, I'm doing the UCB jam at 6 p.m., the 10:30 pit jam. I'm doing the Wednesday 6 p.m. jam. I'm watching all of Super Free Wednesday, which was the old house themed at the pit, doing the 11 o'clock p.m. jam, doing the Thursday 6 p.m. jam, doing the Thursday 10:30 p.m. jam, doing the Friday 6:30 p.m. jam. And then that's not even including all of the shows that I was doing as like an indie team member, or all the practice groups that I was a part of.
That was just your anchor schedule.
That was my anchor schedule. And so like my life was really just devoted to improv for like a whole soul year. And because I watched so many shows and so many people performing, like I kept constantly asking myself, like, how are they making this first thing that they say so funny? And not even like the first thing. I'm talking about like the second line. The first line is generally, I think, not that funny. It doesn't have to be, but it generally tends to not be. And that's fine, because it really shouldn't be. It should just be establishing stuff. But there were people that I was seeing in the second line making me laugh. And I'm like, what are you doing that's making this magic grow? And it was it was a constant question I kept asking myself until I realized I don't have to like do so much work, which is what every teacher preaches, but you don't have to do so much work to find the funny thing. If you really do just kind of work around what you're given, it'll be funny, or it'll be good. It'll be fun to watch and entertaining for the audience. So that's I always tell this to my students as well. Like, I'm not just a performer. Like, I'm an audience member as well. My relationship between the two are fluid. I'm an audience and I'm a performer, and being in both shoes are how I inform each role. And so being an audience member for so long helped diving into the performance aspect of it for me as well.
Yeah, it's super important. My friend Gary always says that like improv is one of the only art forms that you can learn from by watching, because the audience and the people on stage generally have an equal knowledge of what's going on. So everything that happens, everyone is experiencing in real time in the same way. The performers have an active role in it and are more trained, for looking for things and thinking about it and doing the thing. But nobody knows more than anybody else about what's going to happen next. And so because of that relationship as a audience member, you can learn from watching the performance of it, which is not always true of any skill, or you can't necessarily learn, I guess maybe now that I'm really thinking about this, you could learn, but it's certainly the improv as an art form you can learn the most from. there's just so much that you can learn, and even like put yourself in the position of like watching and wondering what you would do next, or just kind of like thinking about figuring out for yourself what's going on in the scene and the who, what, where, or filling in negative space as you're watching.
Yeah, I think I think the biggest difference is that, like, what you're going off what your friend is saying and how you're like coming to like, well, maybe you can, but like, I think what it is like, if you watch someone doing improv and you see the move that they made, like, you're like, oh, they just established the where because that hadn't been established yet, and that's hilarious. You can literally just remember that move, place it somewhere in the index of your brain, and the next time someone hasn't established the where, you can apply that again. Where watching stand-up, you can see kind of how some people write their punchlines, but you may not be able to break it down to that exact science and then apply it immediately on your sets.
Yeah, there's a big missing piece of the process that goes, behind it. You can learn from, like, you can study good actors or dancers, but like you don't necessarily learn the process. But the process in improv is happening right in front of you. Whether or not the people on stage are sharper or better or have a particular role, with more experience or whatever it is. As a student, you can still watch that and see the process happening, and the result of it all at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's so cool. I love that this is something that just dawned on you after just examining over and over again and being an active or engaged audience member. That's really great.
Oh, dude, improv is, I still love watching improv. Like, I'm a huge improv fan still, like most people are, even if it's bad and whatever people want to deem as bad. The only bad improv is when they're not having fun.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only time where I'm like, okay, you guys don't even look like you're having fun. Why would I have fun? But if you get people just like at least like coming on and laughing and goofing off with each other, that's really, really great to watch. But I'm always trying to actively listen and see what people are doing, because there's so many times that people make moves that I'm just like, I would never have thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's like you learn perspectives too, because again, as a student, it's like, okay, you might be learning from people who are more experienced or sharper at it, and that kind of trains your brain to think, just as to see and learn from how experienced improvisers perform and what their process is in real time. But even at the point where you're like as good as you're going to get at improv, or like, just as experienced as everyone else around you, you still watch other people to see how their brains work. And you become more and more like prepared, or just like mind expanded on like, oh, wow, there's like, so many different things that this person or this type of player might do that like is so unique to them, and it can be really like exciting, and I don't know, it makes, for me personally, when I watch other people just like making moves that I'm like, that's so them and not the way that I would do it, and it works so well for them, but it wouldn't be what I would do, or I wouldn't know how to make it work. That makes me excited to play with, to find people to play with, and to sometimes even to like try things that normally wouldn't work for me. Do you find yourself like picking up stuff from people and trying to like see if you can do something like what they did, if you see something that is not like your style?
Oh yeah, 100%. My biggest trait that I always tell people, like the thing that I am 100% best at, is learning how to learn. Or just learning. That is my number one skill, dude. I love learning. In my opinion, like I do have an ego, who doesn't? But when it comes to like just sitting down and not knowing something, or thinking that you don't know everything, it's so humbling, because then you can really just watch people, even if you don't think they're better than you. Even if you don't think they're better than you, they always are doing things that are more whimsical. So I am trying to like watch, like I'm attentively watching with the hope that people are doing stuff that I'm like, I want to do that next time I play. because I want to be really versatile, and that's always been my goal as a performer, is being as versatile as possible. And even now I can feel like some stagnancy and stale moves that I keep doing over. Like I'm always playing a boss. I always tag in and I'm always playing a boss or the wife. I'm always playing the boss or the wife of somebody, and just trying, and an animal, right? But I'm trying to like figure out more ways to expand and become more playful, because I feel like after doing a lot of improv, sometimes you want scenes to be grounded, but then you can also perhaps get into a zone where everything is always really grounded, where I think it's really good to play with people that are willing to just come out there and throw a wrench in everything without saying no, but just throwing a wrench in it in terms of like, we're all cartoon characters now, or just some sort of zany wackiness. And I want to be able to live in those worlds, in all of them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Versatility, I think, is key. I think that that really is like, again, just watching people getting a variety of different playing styles. Like, I think the more versatile you can be, that's like the job of an improviser, is to be ready for anything. And I think at a certain point you can like start focusing on, obviously when you know what you really like, it's like go do as much of that as possible. But I think a lot of people try to skip to that before really challenging themselves to bring in all the different possibilities and just try out things for size and see, because you never know what might make something click or trigger a whole new love for improv, or just like, allow you to play at another level. When you might deprive yourself of that if you focus too hard in one direction too early. So I think, you're right. Variety is definitely essential.
Very essential. And like sometimes, people get a little worried about the chaos that happens on stage. I remember this jam that I was hosting, and there was a very clear, these two people are in a bathroom together, and I just remember like, somebody trying to tag out and make it like, hey, you've been in the bathroom for a really long time in the apartment.
Okay.
One of them disappears, and then a brand new character comes on, not understanding what had actually happened, like in terms of the move. And he comes out, and they're like, "Whoa, who's that guy?" And everybody, like even the guy that's everybody, just like, "Who's that guy?" And he's like, "I was just in the bathroom." And so, it becomes this chaos, right? And then more people start coming in and making it chaotic, like not intentionally, but they're just not picking up on the moves that have been established like in front of them. And then someone else comes up like, yeah, I was just using the bathroom. And so for me, this is another example of how you work around what's given to you, right? The negative space. I'm like, this is chaotic. I'm gonna add to the chaos. So I just literally, he's like, because there was a point where the person said, why are all these people in my apartment? And I am a big believer that improvisers on stage are telling improvisers off stage what to do.
Okay.
So I just came in and I was like, "You're calamari, sir," and I gave it to one of the guests and walked away.
So I love that. I think that's amazing. That is right up my alley.
It's like, yo, people are so worried about the chaos. It's like, dude, we just watched like 7 sets of standard improv. Like this is different.
What are you guys doing here? This is my restaurant.
I just want to play into the chaos, man. If it's there and I don't take a chance at it, it's just not like, at least I have that story. Like I still think about that from time to time, and it makes me laugh all the time. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, there's two things I want to talk about. I don't want to forget about this adding to the chaos. But I guess before we get back to it, I just want to kind of frame, like, in negative space, there's a lot of room for chaos, right? Because I guess I'm just wondering what your general thoughts are on like, okay, when things are like explicitly stated versus like strongly implied versus like very subtly implied. Because if I'm a character and my opening line is like, well, good news is it's not broken. Even in that, you're like, this person's probably a doctor, right? Like,
Oh, that's what you thought.
maybe, yeah. Like, well, what did you think?
You know what? I didn't even think doctor. I was just thinking like, okay, this thing is broken. I'm gonna label the thing, right? Like I'm like, this thing is broken. So I'm like, oh man, you're telling me it's broken. So like once again, say your line again, and this is what I'm asking. This is literally my thought process when you ask me this.
Yeah. Well, the good news is it's not broken.
I'm thinking we're roommates because I'm like, why is this guy telling me good news, right? The first thing, why is this good news? And if it's not broken, it's got to be something. I'm like, yeah, we really need a toilet, man. We really need a toilet. If this thing doesn't get to work soon, or wait, I don't know. Wait, I'm glad that it's working. Sorry, I'm glad that you got it working. It's not fixed either. I mean, it.
Yeah.
Flushes. It slowly flushes.
Yeah. But because also there is a but implied, right? It's like the good news is it's not broken. Well, there's bad news too. So like it may not be broken, but it may not be working. Like, doing a good job, yeah. But so yeah, like I think I'm so glad that example turned out the way that it did, because like yeah, for me, when I say that, or if I heard that, I think that I would be very much like, okay, that's doctor. And if I was like, okay, so if I go, well, the good news is not broken, but we are going to recommend physical therapy for you. Then you're probably like doctor at that point. Would you think?
Yes, absolutely. And that's strongly implied versus explicit. It's got to be as clear as possible.
Well, so yeah, I would say like the first one, the good news is not broken, like subtly or softly implied, and then we are going to recommend physical therapy is more like strongly implied. We still have not explicitly said that I'm a doctor, but like until it's like but as a doctor with all these degrees on the wall, like you know what I mean, like just shoehorning it in there. But
and then even strongly implied, you could even good thing it's not broke like. Good thing it's not broken, but
yeah.
But even then, that's not explicit.
The stethoscope. Well, good thing it's not broken, but not everybody gets a broken heart from a relationship. Yours, yeah. Yes. But I guess I don't. So help me out here, because I'm not really sure what my question is in this. But I guess what I'm kind of just pointing to is this like spectrum of establishments and of negative space. I don't know what it was in the apartment bathroom scene that maybe the third person missed, or whoever walked on, that you were saying like it seemed apparent to most people in the room that they had missed something that established that there's somebody in the bathroom that wasn't them, that was, and that they're in an apartment or something, right? There's like some missing piece where like this other person that walks on created confusion because it seemed apparent to most people something that was not apparent to this person. Am I making sense?
Yes, and it's to this person, and I would also say maybe not as apparent to the guy that just got tagged out either, because I think there was something along the lines like, what are you doing so long in the bathroom? Like come on out, like trying to like get the other person to come back out, but they had just gotten tagged out.
Okay. But so maybe this is my question, or what I want to get your insight on is that like, I think it's good to encourage specificity and clear, explicit establishments, especially while you're building the habit of making choices and making clear choices to your scene partners. As an improviser, as you're like building your chops, at some point it becomes like less is more. And I think I imagine the goal is like, okay, how can I strongly imply things but talk like a normal person and trust my partner to pick up on my good news is not broken, but we are going to recommend physical therapy. Trusting that you're like gonna pick up on what I'm putting out there, and also that if you don't, that's okay too. But like, is there a sweet spot between those, or like, is there a point when you're like, keep getting more specific? Like, when do you go from being like, the goal is to be as specific and explicit as possible, to like dialing it back to leave a little bit of room for interpretation, or and to challenge yourself to be more like realistic and not so heavy-handed?
Yeah, I mean, that's great questions. Like in terms of specificity, I really hammer it in.
Yeah.
I really hammer the specificity in, because if I have an idea, or even not even just have an idea, I just think it's just a good idea in general to just label as much as you can, or try to get into practice of it, because when you're on stage, you're not going to be able to label everything off the top of your dome, perhaps. But I really try to go all in on the specific. Like I would say, as your doctor, good news is not broken, just so I can get that rollout, just so my partner is very, very clear that I'm a doctor. Now, if I come in thinking I'm a doctor and I think it's very clear, and I'm like, well, good thing it's not broken, and they go, yeah, I'm really glad my toilet's not broken. I'm like, yep, I can feel its heartbeat right now. Right. You know what I mean? Like I do love coming in thinking I'm one thing, but then getting like switched to like a different whatever scenario. That's fun for me.
Yes, I agree. So that's what I'm saying is like I think exactly what you said. It's like it's such a good practice to be in, but like I think if I really put out the two scenarios, that I prefer the one where you think it's a toilet. Like I want that. It's more exciting to me. Whatever idea I had, or that we might latch onto, that's like clear from like a source making a premise out of it, or like a callback or whatever's clear that we had an idea for, that we want to execute. I think the maximum joy of executing that idea is less fun for me, or that maximum joy is less for me than the scenario where I'm like, even if I go, good news is not broken, but we're going to recommend physical therapy. And you go, well, there's still something wrong with this fucking toilet. Like, I still am like, yeah, well, you pushed a little hard, so you're gonna have to work with somebody to walk straight again, buddy. Like, I want the surprise. And so I guess maybe my like what I'm wondering about is like, how do you get in the good habit of specificity and making good establishments, but also hold back just enough to leave room for that positive surprise?
Yeah. No, that's such a hard balance to really find, because because like it's really, if you really think about it, teachers would tell you that's not really yes-anding, right? The person's strongly implying that they're a physical therapist or a doctor, and you're completely throwing a wrench in it by putting a toilet, right? The beginner yes and move on that would be, yes, doctor, I am in pain, or I'm really happy that it's not what it could be, right? Like that's what you're you really supposed to do in like level 1 or whatever. So that balance of leaving like a little bit, the way I have found it for me, can I ask you a question, James?
Of course, yeah.
When you initiate, this is my podcast now. Now, when you status transformation, when you initiate a scene, do you come out knowing exactly what you're going to frame it as?
Sometimes, I mean, I guess normally, I'm going to say yes. I think actually most of the time I try to and would like to have something in mind for what I'm doing, and I usually try to have it be either something that I'm going to label relationship wise or space wise. That's probably like what I think of, like from a suggestion, is like, okay, what kind of space can I take us to so that I can give us a background, or who am I going to be talking to or intending to talk to. And then sometimes I'm just like, if a scene needs to happen, I'll go out there. Or if things feel too stuffy, then I'll do the we're all cartoons now move. But most of the time I have an intention for scene initiations.
I'm not even gonna lie to you. I forget my suggestion as soon as I get it, and I don't even do it intentionally. We get the. I never really ask for them anymore. If I do, I whatever. But I really do just like it. Just good one year out the other. Chris Griggs, one of my instructors, told our whole class, like, come out like you want something. He's like, I may not always come out doing object work or something, or my character doesn't always come out the best, but he's like, I always come out looking like I want something. So that's what I try to do. Like, I don't have any intention of what I'm going to say. I don't know the relationship. I literally come in there zero. And I treat the stage like a matrix. Mm-hmm. And I'll get to that too before we run out. I always treat the stage like a matrix. So as soon as I enter, I always this is like my go-to. I always enter like that.
Like you're coming up from behind a curtain.
yeah, right. Like that,
or like stepping through, like the that like metallic liquid mirror in the Matrix.
Yes.
Narnia.
I'm in Narnia. So that's how I always try to come on like I want something, and I'm always trying to do some sort of object work. But I love mirroring people. And I think to give it that room without the specificity, the way we're taught at the pit and the way we teach is come in and start silent. Do some object work. Look at each other. Mirror each other. That's my thing. I'm mirroring. You're talking about negative space. Someone comes in. James, do something. Any sort of object work. Yeah, do any sort of object work. Right? And so that's my thing. I'm going to literally do as much as I can to mimic exactly what you're doing. And in that space of time, you have a chance to come up with any sort of like idea based off of what we're doing right now, right? Nothing's really been established. And once the first line is said, the specificity should become more and more clear. I guess really it should start off with like blank implied, medium implied, stronger implied, completely explicit in terms of how I think it really should merge together. And so, does that, I don't even remember how I told myself I would be really good about remembering the whole question.
We've lost the thread. I don't know where we are. No, I think that the thread started on the idea of like at what point, how do you balance being explicit and I guess helpful, being a helpful contributor to the scene versus still leaving room for somebody else's interpretation and that surprise of mismatched ideas on what's going on. And I think what you're saying is great, is that like I love this. Okay, I'm sorry, my mind's going in 5 different directions because I
mine
love
too,
that
dude.
for your I know for your jam, I think you do like a one line or
one word story or sentence.
One word at a time sentence with the group that's going to perform. They create a sentence, one word at a time, one person at a time, and then they'll use that as their suggestion, which I think is great. I even like performing no suggestion. I have played shows like that. I used to play at a theater in Michigan that the house team never used a suggestion, and it was just a lights up and go kind of thing. And I love that. I get hung up on suggestions, or I feel like when I feel a responsibility to the audience that like, if we're going to take a suggestion, we should use it. I'd rather not take one and not use it, but I feel weird not using it when when we got it, you know. But that's on me. There's no law against that. Like, I'd
Can I
rather
comment
be
on that?
playing like you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, because it's not even like I said. I never was like, I don't do suggestions like that. That kind of, but I
That's
listen.
a lot.
I just did that to please you. Now it's my show. I listened to the Centralia podcast with Patrick McCartney, and he was interviewing David Koechner.
Yeah.
And David Koechner was like, use the suggestion and bring it into your body. So if you get the suggestion cheese, maybe I think Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese has holes in it. Maybe I'm someone who looks at all of my flaws too deeply. Or like cake. I think of chocolate mousse cake. I think of that feeling that you get when you eat something too sweet. And I'm like, maybe my character is nostalgic about the past.
Yeah.
You know, like embodying it into the personality of the character that you're playing. I'm not saying that I do that, but that was very interesting to listen to. So if the audience gives me a suggestion, I don't care if I say the word in the... I mean, obviously, we're not supposed to. I mean, it's not that we're not even supposed to. I don't even care if I'm making it obvious anymore.
Yeah, but here's what my solution has become. If I'm hosting, like when Julia and I play, I think we do this. It's been so long, but you know, we'll be like, we're going to take a suggestion, and that's going to influence our show, but we're going to forget what it is and keep improvising anyway. And other times we'll remember what it is, and you'll see it pop back up. But either way, we're making it up as we go. You know, just something like that kind of like reminds the audience that like we're going to ask for the suggestion, but there's a ton of ways that it can influence us, and like we're improvising, so like this is not about the acrobatics of how many different ways we can prove to you that you're using your suggestion. Like, we're gonna be busy doing other things. You know, like that's I just like to like nod on that. That gives me a license to do it. I should probably just worry less about it and be like, that's improv, baby, and trust other people that I'm playing with to like tend to that role, and just let myself play the way that I would rather be.
I think so, because like in your embodiment of the audience, they're like, well, one participant out of us 40 gave him a word that he barely even uses this scene word. Like, yo, think about it. When you get up there and you forget the suggestion, they're in the same boat.
Right, but so where this comes from for me is that like in I think. I guess I don't want to say that in New York people are always more in the know about what improv is, because sometimes that's not the case. But you know, in Michigan, when our theater was doing a lot more, especially with long form, to like kind of bring the audience in and educate people about like the context of what they're going to see, and even you know, the best teams at our theater would take a suggestion, the first scene would use it, and then like leave it behind from there. Rarely would you really see a team that was hammering into the suggestion or like keeping the thread to build, you know, a clear like theme out of it, and then like bringing it back in the callbacks, you know, all Harold style or whatever. It's just very like shoot from the hip in the best way improv. And I would have like, I had a student that was an advanced one, and this is, so there's like 4 intro, 4 advanced. So this is the 5th class that this student had taken, and he was watching a show, and I talked to him afterward, and I was like, "What you think?" And he's like, "It's still really hard to tell when they go from the improv to the scripted stuff." And I was like, well, they're not. But it just made me think that like, oh, because it feels like that. It feels like I worry about that for the audience. And again, it's me putting too much of a burden on myself to handhold the audience. But like, I just am always looking for a way to just make it make sense and give the audience the same license that the performers have to let go of the suggestion even when you take one, and not then become skeptical or confused about what's happening.
Yeah, and that's your Midwestern hospitality. I'm
Yeah,
from
yep.
Indiana for all the people that don't know, but it's so Midwestern of you to go, I just want to make sure that they're on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I would never argue against that. That to me just makes it perhaps even takes a little less burden on them when they're asking for the suggestion. Because we did a Pittison showcase where it was the Halloween one, and somebody asked, hey, can we get a suggestion of anything at all? The whole audience was quiet. Like everyone was quiet, and then they literally had to go, hey, no, it's okay, you can talk during this portion.
Yeah.
And then someone just shouted out fish. Yeah. Like I think maybe sometimes there is this pressure and weight, like, oh, I got to give them something really good here. Or there's the other side where they're like, oh, I can't wait to say dildo.
Yeah.
And they're cousins. No.
No, you're right. It is like, but that's actually sometimes a case for not using a suggestion, is like, if you don't, I think most people don't give a shit in an audience. I mean, most people don't give a shit if they're having a good time. And I think most improvisers don't give a shit whether the audience thinks it's scripted or not. The performers get enough out of it being improvised, so that even if the audience is 100% convinced that it's scripted, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. What
matters to me is that I'm having fun in the medium that I have most fun in, which is unscripted, completely improvised theater. So it doesn't really matter. That's the whole thing about like improv FAQ, is trying to like bridge these gaps where people on both sides don't give a shit.
Well, then
gap that no one's trying to cross.
Can I also comment? No, because working on the negative space of what you already have established and trying to relate to what you said, I think we should make more of an emphasis when you interview someone for an improv set. I think it should just be stated, hey, look, this improv set is not our opinions on your life or any sort of direct commentary. We are just making up scenes as they come, and we just appreciate you giving us some ideas to play with. Like, I would appreciate that as someone who's in the know, as an improviser.
Yeah.
I think that's just a courtesy to the person that just got interviewed and also the audience, so that they know we're not making fun of you. We're just doing scenes out of fun ideas.
Yeah. I think that's really, again, it's the Midwestern hospitality. Like, I don't want you to feel made fun of.
Yeah. I don't want you to feel.
Yeah, we're laughing with you.
Yeah.
Can I get you anything, like a water or tea or something?
Yeah. Do you need H2O?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's circle back away from the suggestion stuff. And I'm trying to remember, there was something that I was like, oh, I don't want to forget to talk about. Some thing that maybe we already covered it without knowing.
The Matrix? Was it the Matrix part? No.
Yeah. You said you wanted to come back to that, so let's do that. Yeah. Talk to me about this Matrix concept.
Yeah. The Matrix concept, right? Like, I tell all my students this as well. Like, imagine a Matrix, and as soon as something is said, it's in there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I just did this scene on Friday at my jam. I was really happy about it. The actor, she said, all of our clothes in the laundry and dryer are green now. And we were just like, she was yelling at it because I would like spent all of her life savings on the McCarthy grant, and she was mad at me and like getting. And then so I run around because now we've gone all the way to stage left.
Okay.
And so in my head, I'm like, she already established laundry and dryer, and I know that I need to keep using as much maximum space as I can. So I run around and I open up a dryer and I just start throwing the green clothes out of it. And that's something that I always like try to get people to start seeing, is if something's been said, it can pop up anywhere. And I have an exercise for that too, where I in my class, I have two people go out and they do a scene. And anytime any sort of environmental stuff is established, someone off the sidelines has to come in and play it, even if it's a table, a chair. That way, they can visually see that it's actually happening instead of just having to imagine it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's sort of like populating little virtual reality objects in the Matrix. Yeah. And then again, that's negative space too. I think one another angle on this that I came to mind is like TJ and Dave, who would do like, no suggestion. There's just two of them. If you read it into their book, they're also kind of like looking at like what is adjacent in the world around them. So like you're talking about just in the scene. Okay, we've established that there's like laundry, washer and dryer over here, or a table, or a door, or whatnot. Something that they describe doing in their shows is being like, okay, well, who's in the next room? What are the adjacent spaces here? There's like, if we're in a house, then like somebody might be walking their dog outside, or the kids are in the backyard, or what are the neighbors doing? There's like these adjacent spaces, and I think that's a really useful way to world build, and also like give yourself places to go, even if they don't have to necessarily, they're going to be related because they're sharing the same world and adjacent space, but like you don't have to jump there and then be like, oh, it's following the same plot thread, just because you went to the neighbor's house. They could be doing something entirely different, but you take away the burden of inventing new spaces if you play that way, just by being like, okay, there's somebody in the same neighborhood, and that's enough to not have to worry so much about the who, what, where in the next scene. You know what I mean? I really like that concept.
I also really, really love that concept. And that's probably one of my more weaker parts of my own game, because I see people do those tag outs where, it was like, I saw this show where I think they were like, hey, so this is the youngest sibling club, right? It was the youngest sibling where we're all getting tired of getting shit on, that kind of stuff. And then somebody else like creates a whole nother group where it's like, hey, it's the only child club, right? It's like, of course, if there's a single child club somewhere in this world, there's an only child club. But my brain just doesn't operate on all levels. When I'm in the middle of a set, I just don't operate as quickly on that as other people do. And that's a move that I have in my index that I'm trying to get better at and use in my set, is what do the adjacent people around these people that we've created, what do they do? What do they believe in? Then that's something, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do love that style of play. And that's something that Mike Warner and I, when we do 2Prov together, we really dive deep into that kind of level of world. I think it's probably just really good for 2Prov, but it's really fun as well. Like we're never just in one place. We're just constantly moving in this world in one direction.
Yeah. Yeah, again, because like, especially for 2Prov, or it's just like when you're in every scene, the whole show, little things that you can do to like take away the burden of wherever you go next, and just like kind of keep it threaded internally, but loose and flexible enough to still be playful, are awesome tools and approaches to play. But then again, it's like, even if you guys are both like every single scene, we're like, fuck it, whatever happened before, and a suggestion, we're just gonna like start from scratch. That can work too, but it's I guess just different tools or different playing styles.
Yeah, and our styles aren't done yet. There's always adapting.
Yeah, man. Well, that's the wrapping up tone of voice.
I did the tone of voice that is supposed to sound like I said something deep at the end of a podcast.
Offering up a blow line here. But yeah, no, it is time for us to bring this conversation to a close. It's been a really great one. I think there's so much more that we could unpack in there. I have really enjoyed talking to you about negative space and everything else that we talked about off of that topic. Before we let you go, is there anything else that you want to plug for your own stuff, or what's going on at the pit and classes, anything like that?
Yeah. Hey, follow me on Instagram at Sunny Outlaw. That's OUTLAW, and you see my first name right there. And I do a drop in usually on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. And come to my improv jam Fridays at 5. I really love doing improv.
Yeah, awesome. The theater's over on 29th Street in Chelsea, in Manhattan. Okay, Sonny, thanks so much for joining. It's been great. Look, man, this is what happens when I don't have Bob here to like keep me grounded, as I just start spouting off.
Oh, dude, no, I love the spouting off, man. Thank you so much, dude. I had a great time. Goodbye.
Thanks everyone for joining. We will catch you next time. Oh, friendly reminder that we are typically at 1 p.m. and just a special broadcast at noon today, but typically at 1 p.m. We'll catch you next time on the Improv Network podcast. Bye.